So sleep, a lot of people just are whimsical about it. They think, oh, I'm just going to lay my head on the pillow and it's just going to happen or not. But you really need to invest in establishing the habits and hygiene around this. You need to think about sleep as you would anything you take seriously. You need to try to perfect the craft.
Actually, I'm super interested for each of you. What do you think has the greatest impact on your sleep negatively? Like, if you could choose one thing that's like the highest, I'll share first. Mine is like intense television. So
really?
what
are you watching, Mike?
Oh, nothing right now.
This is fun. This is fun.
Watch it.
Mike, tell us more.
Okay, all right, fine.
If you realize sleep is the number one performance enhancing drug, there's no more powerful drug in the world you can take on a daily basis, then it's worth prioritizing your life around sleep. Hi everybody, this is the Don't Die Podcast with Bryan Johnson. Today we're talking about sleep and how it is the number one best performance enhancing drug in the world that you can take every single day. If you are struggling with sleep, we are going to try to condense the shortest and best list ever created to help you achieve high quality sleep every single day. Yeah, I think ironically we're talking about sleep today, are we not?
I'm so tired.
I'm exhausted. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing fine.
You're good.
Jealous.
I'm just great.
Kate and I went to Las Vegas. We went to Vegas on Monday. Today's Thursday, so we had 2 nights there. And I had a terrible night's sleep the first night.
Me too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I've heard there's lots of sleep in Vegas. That's a general
Right.
consensus.
It was like evening Bryan, evening Kate. We went out. No, I'm just joking. We actually tried to go to sleep early, and then it's just so hard when you're in a new hotel room, not in your environment.
Environment is so key to getting good sleep, right?
Yeah, I mean, actually, the first day we were there, we had a whole bunch of unexpected events that happened. So we brought half our calories with us. We're always prepared. But then the other half requires us to be prepared to find some form of, vegetables, like some dish. And we had no time. We had kind of some emergency things pop up. And so we didn't get to eat until 4 or 5 p.m. And so then it was like a complicated situation. Like, do you fast or do you eat? And I rolled the dice and I ate. And it raised my heart rate. Like, it did everything I talk about nonstop, and it wrecked my sleep.
Did you guys hit the buffet? Was it like an all-you-can-eat Vegas buffet?
That's the crazy thing. It was like hummus, raw vegetables. It was all very, very clean, but it still made a huge impact.
Yeah, digestion. Doesn't matter what it is. Keeps you awake.
Today we are talking about sleep, and we got some feedback from previous sessions. So we're learning, and the feedback is it's hitting, and people want to hear practical tips as fast as possible. And then if we jump into the science a bit later, that's cool as well. So we're going to try to do that format today and walk into some of the more specific suggestions we have. And so we have been talking about sleep over the past couple of years and the importance to basically every other thing you care about in life. So people typically think about sleep as it relates to health, but people don't typically think about sleep as it relates to how much money they make and whether they're going to get a promotion and whether they can find, a mate, whether they can have, like imagine having children. Like everything you do in life maps back to sleep. And today we want to talk about why that's the case, the science behind it, and then some things you can do to improve your sleep in life.
First half, we're going to talk about the practical protocol, what you should know that you should do. And in the second half, we'll get more in deep in the science and what the literature says that supports how we've arrived at this protocol.
And also to remind you, Dr. Mallin was formerly a emergency medicine doctor, actually going through medical school and residency, and then ER doctor. Sleep was not a part of your daily routine or your lifestyle for many, many years.
No, the lack of sleep was a part of my daily routine and lifestyle for many, many years. So I'm still playing catch up. I'm 5 years into playing catch up, and I'm still figuring things out.
Yeah, the irony that like the system actually encourages doctors, the people that we hold most sacred for our health, to service their own health in that. So wild.
Yeah, like when I'm in a moment of crisis.
Right, yeah, and with the data, like we have the data that physicians make poor choices when they're sleep deprived, yet we still encourage the same very thing. So yeah, it's crazy.
Mike, do you remember what it felt like to be that sleep deprived, or is it just kind of a blur?
Oh God, yeah, I do. It is the worst feeling. You know that like that sinking sensation in your gut when you feel like when you wake up too early, or maybe you're getting up for a plane or something like that. It's that sinking sensation in your gut magnified 10x, and just this overwhelming urge to lay your head down wherever you are at that very moment, like at a computer, in a patient's room, like wherever you are, you're just like, you're constantly like, you're half listening to the patient and half like, or the nurse or whomever, and half like just wanting to put your head down sideways and close your eyes. It's the worst feeling in the world for sure.
That's so messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing with, we were recently on this weekend, we were catching up with some friends, and one of these people went to a very prestigious school growing up. And they were saying how, same thing, they put their students through rigorous, intense educational programs that are at the detriment of their sleep. Like the schedule that they're required to follow, that's mandatory, required them to get little sleep. And so the same thing, it's like wild that we would do that to the brain.
When I was in a split custody situation with the children's mom, and I would beg them to get good sleep. Like, they would have homework until like 11 o'clock, midnight, and they get up in like 5 a.m. to do early morning seminary for their church. So they'd be getting 4-5 hours of sleep. And I went all out. It's like, please get sleep. I don't care what your grades are. Just please get sleep. Because the evidence I was finding was that it was significantly going to impair their emotional capacity, not just now, but also later in adulthood. That you miss out on that important development phase. But man, it was such a grueling situation, and it was so hard personally to be one step removed from being able to care for them, and just seeing this happen, and I just was powerless. So it really is it's not just about your own well-being, but it's about others as well.
Totally. Actually, before we jump into the protocol, do you want to mention the Kernel study that you did? Because I find that so fascinating. I think that resonates with a lot of people in their lived experience of being sleep deprived.
Yeah. So at Kernel, we built this device, this brain interface. You put on your head, it's like a bike helmet, and it's like a blood oxygenation device. The one you put on your fingers is looking at, it's using light to look at oxygen levels of the brain. And you could then use that as a proxy for neurons firing. And we did a small study, this is N=1. We looked at my deep sleep, my sleep, and as it relates to my willpower. And what we found is when I had lower levels of deep sleep, I think on the average was somewhere around 35 to 45 minutes versus an hour and a half to 2 hours of deep sleep, my willpower plummeted. And the way we measured this is a go, no-go task where you see images in the screen and you try to basically stop yourself from pushing the button when you see red versus green. And that measures your ability to control, like impulse control. And so this intuitively makes sense that if you don't get good sleep, the following night, when you're staring down the pint of ice cream or the bag of chips or like whatever your vice is, your likelihood of withstanding that temptation is very low if you haven't had deep sleep the night before. It significantly influence on the willpower. So that's also, it really is, it forms this domino effect, either pointing positively or negatively, but you get into a vicious loop otherwise negatively if you start skipping on sleep and you fall into that cycle where anyway, we'll get into the habits of how this makes these effects complicated.
Yeah, frontal lobe is first to go, I guess, right? So the decision making, the willpower section of the brain is the area where we start to see the most reduction in performance with sleep disruption, which is important for not just like whether you're pushing a red or a blue button, but also your ability to drive a car, your ability to make life-saving decisions if you work in a hospital, your ability to prevent yourself from eating a bag of potato chips, whatever that decision-making capacity is going to be impaired. And yeah, it's interesting. You used the word impair earlier, Bryan, and there's, I think, a study looking at people with sleep deprivation and actually showing that the effects are similar to being legally drunk, which is interesting because like we allow, tractor trailer drivers to drive sleep impaired. We allow physicians to work sleep impaired. We don't monitor people's sleep to determine if they're capable of performing their job or not. And that's kind of scary.
Yeah. So if you're watching this podcast, give us a rating. How are we doing so far? And then compare that to previous podcasts. Both Bryan and I are a little sleep deprived. So theoretically, this should be technically a worse podcast, so let us know.
All right, should we get going on?
Let's do it. So this is all of your power laws to have amazing sleep, coming from the man that got 8 months of perfect sleep.
Okay, so as I go through this, Kate and Mike, jump in at any point if you want to add personal antidote, evidence, observations. Cool?
Sounds great.
Let's do it.
The first observation is for someone to realize that you have never been taught how to sleep. You've been taught how to drive a car, potentially. You've been taught sex ed in school. You learned how to do algebra and geometry, and you learned history lessons. But in society, there is no course anywhere to learn how to sleep, which is really insane. That it's such a fundamental part of our existence, and there's just no education anywhere. I tried to become an expert in sleep, and the way I did this is I achieved 8 months of perfect sleep using a wearable, and I wanted to demonstrate you really can. And doing that, I discovered a lot of things that I just didn't find anywhere. And so I'm going to explain to you in very simple terms how you can also master sleep, that if it's evaded you for years where you feel like no matter what you do, you just can't get good sleep, I'm going to try to make this so it's not mysterious anymore. It's actually the body responds in a very predictable way to what you do in life. And hopefully these tips will help you unravel that mystery and then be able to start making gains on a daily basis.
And I'm going to probably jump in while you're talking and ask questions that I know that people often ask you when you bring up each of these things.
All right. So the first idea, the first concept is that you need to think about sleep as you would anything you take seriously. A hobby, your job, being a parent. You need to try to perfect the craft. And that means you need to take it seriously. So sleep, a lot of people just are whimsical about it. They think, I'm just going to lay my head on the pillow and it's just going to happen or not. But you really need to invest in establishing the habits and hygiene around this. And so the mindset is really important. And what I like to frame this as is, for example, every day, most of us have meetings and we have set times those meetings begin. So if the meeting begins at 9 a.m. and you show up at 9:04, you typically acknowledge the group and say, I'm sorry for being late, right? Even for a 4-minute infraction basically violates a social norm where you've disrespected other people's time in doing that. Now, if your bedtime is 10 p.m. and you go to bed at 10:04 p.m., it's not customary that you apologize to yourself for being late, right? You're just like, whatever. And if it's 11 or 12 or 1 or 2, you don't even care. And what I want to suggest is that you need to approach sleep with the same level of social rigor as you would in a meeting, that your bedtime is 10 p.m., be on time at 10 p.m. And if you're even a few minutes late, acknowledge that's a form of disrespect to yourself. That's how serious sleep is. Otherwise, it slips in your mind of being this lackadaisical thing that you can just push around. That's number one on mindset around sleep.
I was just going to say some things that we don't do this. I don't do this. I don't think you do, Bryan or Mike. But I've heard that some people set an alarm for their bedtime as opposed to their wake time to indicate that kind of importance in their life. And then the other thing that comes up when people talk about this is they're like, I need to make this, travel. And so something that both Bryan and I do when we're traveling is we don't book any flights that compromise our sleep. So I think when we flew to Honduras, for example, we intentionally flew to Miami, slept one night, and then got on a flight the next day to avoid get there at like 2 a.m. or whatever the time was. So it seems impossible until you accept it as fact. And then pretty quickly you self-resolve and create systems in your life to actually put sleep as your number one priority.
Honestly, like your experience with resting heart rate before going to bed is important. So I'd like for you to share about that. But in general, the concept behind resting heart rate is the idea that we are attempting to achieve a lower resting heart rate when we sleep. And that's because resting heart rate is a marker for parasympathetic nervous system activation and for adequacy of sleep. The higher sleep duration you get, the more recovered you are, the higher your resting heart rate will be, and the more activated your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and relax version of your nervous system. So we're certainly using resting heart rate to track and monitor our success on a nightly basis in terms of how well we are resting our bodies. And the goal should be that you stay at your baseline and or slightly lower. Now, things will determine where your resting heart rate baseline is. For example, your aerobic fitness. The more aerobically fit you are, the lower your resting heart rate will be. Traditionally, the younger you are, the lower your resting heart rate will be, although age is not necessarily predictive of that. It's just that as we get older, we often lose some fitness and lose restfulness. So it tends to creep up. But in general, we should be focusing for a lower resting heart rate. Now, what you do, Bryan, which I think is super interesting, and I think you should share with the listeners, is tracking your resting heart rate prior to sleep, as opposed to the lowest heart rate you've had while you're sleeping, which is what most of these devices like Whoop and Oura and things like that do. What are you doing there, Bryan?
What Mike said about resting heart rate is exactly right. And my experience has been this, is that my sleep depends upon my resting heart rate before bed. And so I've tried to structure my entire life around this idea of things that increase my resting heart rate are bad. Of course, excluding exercise, like that's a different topic. Things that lower my resting heart rate are good. And then you can map your daily life habits and decisions on these two, whether it goes up or whether it goes down. So for example, when you eat food close to bedtime, your heart rate goes up. And when your heart rate goes up, your sleep quality goes down. If you have a fight with someone right before bed, your heart rate goes up, your sleep goes down. If you are on your screens or working and you're in a high stress or in a more aroused state, heart rate goes up, sleep goes down. And so you start pattern matching all these things in your life, where anything that increases your heart rate is going to lessen the quality of your sleep. And it goes back to what Mike said, is the increase in the heart rate, is you're activating your sympathetic nervous system, either in terms of stress or some kind of arousal, or like metabolic activity to digest food. And so I've tried to build my entire life around this one number to lower my heart rate before bed, which means it determines what I eat, when I eat, how I do a nighttime wind down routine. So for example, I'm trying to resolve my internal stress and my worries, trying to avoid rumination. I'm trying to have a 30 to 60 minute block of time before bed where I can turn screens off, go for a walk, meditate, read a book, like take it easy, but have a demarcation between work day and rest day. But I've built all these sets of habits around how to reduce my resting heart rate in that final moment before bed. And that will then boost sleep quality.
Can I ask a question, Bryan?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a personal question. Do you experience anxiety?
I think I experience anxiety in the form of that my mind is always working on problems. And if it hasn't solved the problem in a way that I feel like is appropriate, my mind will just continue to grind on that problem until it feels like it's actually addressed it.
Okay. Just because like the description that you gave around checking your resting heart rate before sleep, like I could just see, like personally, I see myself doing, if I did that on a regular basis, I would struggle if I checked it and it were elevated, because I would be like, oh, I'm going to have a bad night of sleep. I'm guaranteed to have a bad night of sleep. I'm screwed. And then I will inevitably have a bad night of sleep because I now have anxiety about having a bad night of sleep. Like sleep anxiety is a thing that a lot of people have to worry about. Yeah. So like, I love the fact that you have found this, like check my resting heart rate before I go to sleep to know how I'm going to sleep kind of thing. Like, but I could see how for some people who maybe run a little hotter, that might actually, it might be sort of like a loop that it puts them in, that it makes it harder for them to get good sleep. I don't know your thoughts on that. Has anybody ever expressed that to you or thought about that?
Yeah, and I'm curious, Bryan, like when you do see an elevated heart rate, what's your experience of it before bed?
Yeah, I mean, so this happened actually on Tuesday night when Kate and I, we were actually finishing up the day. We had eaten late. I rolled the dice in deciding to eat to get my calories for the day. And I did a quick check on my resting heart rate, and it was, I think, 53 beats per minute. Typically, by that point, I'm around like 46 to 47. And then by the time I put my head on the pillow, I'm 44 beats per minute. And so I did say to Kate, oh no, this is a challenging situation, because I know that at this level of heartbeat, and I'm in a room that is not my home environment, my mattress is not cooled. So I know these circumstances are going to probably create a troubled environment. And sure enough, it happened. And so maybe, did I psych myself out by saying that? Possibly. But I would say that now that I've been so attuned to my sleep pattern for so many years, I can almost guess exactly what's going to happen with my heart rate, my stress, my REM, my deep. It just feels so algorithmic to me that I guess the way I think about it, Mike, is my body is so predictable with the inputs that I don't feel like I really psych myself out. It just kind of feels it's inevitable. And that's true if my heart rate is low or heart rate is high. But I think your point is correct that a lot of people don't have wearables because they wake up in the morning and if they see they got a bad score, they're like, now I feel terrible. And they feel terrible about themselves the entire day because the algorithm told them they feel terrible. So yeah, I know it's a thing and people struggle with that. And I think it's a great point. I personally don't. I really love the data. And whether it affects me or not, it doesn't bother me if it affects me or not, but it does seem like the patterns are very stable. What I see is what I get.
Yeah. And I feel like maybe I'm not the kind of person that indexes really high on that loop cycle. But when I do experience that kind of anxiety where I wake up and I'm like, my sleep score is crap. Am I going to feel like crap today? I think if you do it enough times, if you stick through the process, eventually it evens out because you can't keep, at least in my experience, you can't keep having this anxious attachment to the data because eventually you kind of disassociate from it anyway and you just live your life. So that's been my experience. But again, maybe I'm less of a looper than some people out there.
I'm interested in how low your resting heart rate is before sleep, Bryan. I think that's worth calling out. So you just said out loud that your resting heart rate is generally in 45, 46 range before sleep, correct? And if I'm not mistaken, your resting heart rate while you're sleeping, your lowest heart rate of the night is not much lower. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. I think last night, let me check. I think last night I was 42.
Okay. So maybe you are 3 to 4 points above your actual resting heart rate. I think that's pretty remarkable. I'm pretty sure most people are not nearly that low before they go to bed. And that's probably a function of wind down routine, lack of exercise, late in the day, not eating for hours. I mean, your fasting window prior to bed is what, 6 or 7 hours right now? Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, so that's notable for sure. You're not most people. I would say the average American is not reaching that lowest heart rate until 2 to 3 a.m. And you're pretty much already there by the time you're going to sleep.
That's the crazy thing about Bryan is I feel like he's almost, it's like a pre-sleep Bryan that exists during this wind down routine that is a form of sleeping in a way. It's like the prelude to sleeping that it feels like all of the habits he does throughout the day. Because I've been around Bryan when he's been really diligent with his routine for the day. And then when he hasn't, when we're traveling, and there's a really big difference to the type of person that he is. So I wonder, Mike, deviation between resting heart rate before bed and resting heart rate itself might also be an indication of how well you followed a sleep protocol for the day.
Yeah, totally agree. I think I guess what we're getting at here and what is super interesting is this indicator in of itself, the heart rate prior to sleep, is it even a better metric than your resting heart rate? Right? While you're sleeping.
Right.
I mean, classically, we think about the resting heart rate while you're sleeping, but it's an interesting point because what it's showing how prepared you are for sleep rather than how successfully you slept. Right. And I wouldn't be surprised if the earlier heart rate in the evening is a better overall metric than what you finally got to at the end of your sleep cycle.
I love that. It's you're a professional sleeper and here's how you measure how well of a professional you are at it. Here's your job score for being a professional sleeper.
There are things that could get in the way. So if your bedroom's not optimized, you're having disrupted sleep, things like that, this metric wouldn't really speak to that. This is really speaking to the performance of your day, evening, and how well you've set yourself up for success during sleep.
I mean, one of the reasons why I talk about this, and I take your point as a valid one, that when you create a measurement for people, it can create anxiety. It can become a bigger problem than it is an effective solution. And I guess I do this because two reasons. One is most people I personally engage with feel absolutely overwhelmed with health. You have to think about 100 different things, like how much protein, how much fat, what kind of fat, are cereals good, are they bad? You have to dice through like an infinite number of questions, and you never know who to trust. You don't know what to believe. You're just like all on an island stuck by yourself, and you don't know what to do. And so I talk about resting heart rate as a way to simplify that complexity and just say, look, yes, the world of health and wellness is very complicated. It's not like there's just one answer, but where you can find stability, where you can anchor your boat, is your resting heart rate before bed. That is where you can find peace and comfort and control. Like you control that variable to a very large degree versus you can't control like what, are seed oils good or bad? Like solving that debate is a very hard thing to do, or the cholesterol debate. And so then if you just say what elevates heart rate and what lowers it, you get into basically the most important life decisions people make. Do you have late night snacks? If you're on the couch and you're watching your favorite movie, do you down a pint of ice cream? Do you have a bag of cookies? Do you, smoke some weed? Do you have a glass of wine? Do you, all these questions that come up, do you work until the very moment you go to sleep? And so all those things fall into the area of control that the person has over their life. And so that's why I like this, is that it really gives people a tangible thing they can measure. When people get wearables, the very first thing they'll tell me, I got a wearable and I saw that alcohol wrecks my sleep, right? Like that is like the number one thing people say. And so this is like, and then they see like, okay, alcohol is bad for sleep. When I sleep poorly, I feel miserable. And then they make other connections. When I eat late, I sleep poorly and I feel bad. And so like you make these series of discoveries. So that's why I just want to put them on the path to say, learn what increases your heart rate and learn what lowers your heart rate. And you will just build life habits based upon these observations.
Yeah, it reminds me of wearing a CGM and just like learning, just like, you're just getting data and you're just collecting data and starting to figure out like what are the inputs that matter, right? Like actually, I'm super interested for each of you. What do you think has the greatest impact on your sleep negatively? Like if you could choose one thing that's like the highest, I'll share first. Mine is like intense television. So
really?
what
are you watching, Mike?
Oh, nothing right now.
This is fun. This is fun. Mike, tell us more.
Okay. All right. Fine. So I recently, I have dabbled in The Pit, which is on Max. It's a new like emergency medicine show that's like hyper realistic.
This is good.
Yeah, it's basically for me just like reliving like all of the trauma in my adult life. So, yeah, I watch that. Yeah, if I watch that right before bed, it jacks me up for sure. So that's at the top of the list.
In what way, Mike? Does it take you back to where you were? Or is it like a form of therapy, or do you like what is it?
It's interesting. I've been thinking about that. Like, I don't know, this is totally a tangent, but like, I think it is a bit therapeutic in a way, but it forces me through things that maybe I think I've just walled off and haven't processed. So like, it's like representing these things for me that like, okay, time to work through those feelings and that like trauma that I took on from that family, that person who died, and like all that stuff. But like, it is not conducive to getting a good night of sleep for sure, especially if you watch in the evening right before bed. So that's my bad one right now.
I'm so curious. If you imagined watching that show at like 11 a.m., does it hit the same? Like I can kind of imagine that there's like this link between before bed activity. It's like a weird wind down in a way, but ironically, you're kind of getting yourself more aroused.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like... at 11 a.m., I'm in work mode, I'm not sure that I could like open up emotionally enough to even connect with it at that time. Like, I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah. Really interesting.
I've never thought about or think I could find the time in my life to watch a TV show at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly. It doesn't. Yeah.
Mike, have you seen through the data, how much does watching The Pit, it's The Pit, right?
Yeah. I mean like a lot. It's like, so it'll do multiple things. Heart rate variability decreases, which we haven't talked about yet, but that's another metric for sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system activation, right? So the higher your heart rate variability, the more sympathetically activated you are, or I guess less sympathetically activated you are, which is ideal. So higher heart rate variability, ideal. resting heart rate also goes up, and traditionally you want resting heart rate down, just like we were talking about. And then the other thing that is very remarkable, similar to alcohol or a late meal, my lowest resting heart rate happens much later at night. So earlier in the evening while I'm sleeping, my resting heart rate stays up. So it takes your nervous system a while to relax after you activate it, right? And that's what we're seeing with all of these different types of inputs, whether it's exercise or a meal or stress, thinking about work, answering emails until midnight, watching the pit, whatever it is, you're activating your sympathetic nervous system. It takes a while to relax. And you see that by looking at your heart rate trend throughout the night and not seeing it drop until late in the morning or late at night.
That's really cool. I've never thought about looking at when my lowest resting heart rate happens. I'm going to start doing that every morning. That's a cool tip.
You're looking for a hammock. You actually want the view. You want it to look like a hammock where it starts like just a little bit higher, is relatively flat, hits like lowest around like midpoint of night, and then slowly increases as your body prepares to wake back up. That's ideal. The standard American generally sees it's more like a mountain and then a valley right before they wake up, which is not what you want. Yeah. What do you think has the greatest impact on your sleep negatively?
I think both Bryan and I are going to say the same thing, which is food. Like that, that without a doubt is the number one thing. Any snacks before bed. I feel like a lot of times Bryan and I will be in public with people and be like, like have dinner at 5 p.m. Just try that. And they're like, yeah, I eat early, but they don't take into account the snacks that they're having before bed. I really, that's just like part of their ritual. But I feel like that makes the biggest difference for me for resting heart rate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess stress and food. So my mood is usually very stable, and I typically do a very good job of stress. I think a lot of people have this misconception that my life is like this lavish, carefree, and like my life is brutal. Like it's tough. Like there's a lot of tough stuff happening all the time. And so it really, I guess I've had to work very, very hard for that. But sometimes the topic of the stress becomes really intense. And I'm trying to somehow achieve some kind of reconciliation with it, either resolving myself with the situation or trying to solve the problem of the situation. And I can't quite do it. That will get me almost, I think my kind of like the pit, like that will nail me as well. But then definitely food. And so my lesson from Tuesday in eating later is I would rather go hungry and miss out on some calories for the day than I would try to pick up the calories later in the day. Almost like, and this is again an update for me, because we're always evolving in Blueprint, and I'm always trying to test my body to say, are the conditions I thought were true before still true now? Like for example, we've made like with the sauna over the past 23 days, like, is it the case that my cardiovascular fitness has changed? And now if I eat a bit later in the day, it's not going to have the same kind of, so I'm always doing these experiments every day and all these different capacities. And now it's like, okay, if I should just have a cutoff, like it's noon or 1. If I hit that point and I haven't had a chance to eat, I'm not doing it. And then the consequence on how I feel is so devastating to me because I love feeling great. And like today, I've got a little bit of a headache, right? Even though last night was a great night's sleep, it takes you a couple of days to recover from a really bad night's sleep. And so that one night I'm still trying to recover from. So it's not worth it to me in almost any capacity I mean, we try our very best, but yeah, it's very rarely worth it to me.
You guys, I want to get through all these tips and we've got a lot of time to go. So 1, become a professional sleeper. 2, measure it with your resting heart rate. And just really quickly before we move on for that, Bryan, because I'm even more motivated from this conversation. Can you talk me through how you measure it? So like, do you lie down for 5 minutes, close your eyes? Like, is there any practical way, or like, is it like a rough estimate?
Yeah. So first, just to wrap up that previous segment on the heart rate, let's throw this up on screen, this image I have that shows which things increased heart rate by what amounts. Like for example, alcohol before bedtime is between 5 and 10 beats per minute. Anxiety, stress, and rumination has the biggest one of 5 to 25 beats per minute. Late night exercise, 4 to 10 beats per minute. So we'll put that on screen just so you get some context on how significant of an increase a given thing is that you can anticipate. we need to add the pit there that we're missing.
I was just about to say that.
That falls under anxiety, stress, and rumination.
Right.
I'm sorry, Kate. I'm sorry. What was your comment?
On moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just we've covered it. So professional sleeper, number 1, resting heart rate before bed. Oh yeah, that's right. I want to know how to measure resting heart rate.
Okay, that's right. So if you have a wearable, this is what I do personally. So I will put my head on the pillow and I will take a few deep breaths. As Mike said, it takes a minute for your body to calm down. I can calm my heart rate down in like 60 seconds, but a longer duration time, like if you're aroused from watching a movie or from having a fight or from working or like some high intense social engagement, it's going to take you 30 to 60 minutes to calm your body down. It's very, very hard to accelerate that process. So I'll get back to that in just a minute on like the protocol in a very concise fashion. But yeah, so put your head on the pillow, take a few deep breaths. And then if you have a wearable, you might have a real-time indicator of what your heart rate is. And if you don't, just simply take your fingers, put it on the side of your neck, measure your pulse, count the number of beats in 6 seconds, and then multiply that by 10. And so you're probably somewhere between 50 and 70 beats per minute, thereabouts. And then your goal is to lower your heart rate. So let me just do this in a very concise fashion. So here's what I would suggest you do. Get your baseline measurement tonight, and now make it your goal in 30 days to lower your resting heart rate by 10%. So if you measure it tonight at 60%, within 30 days, try to be at 56 beats per minute. And the way you do that is you intuitively learn or quantitatively learn what things increase your heart rate and which things lower your heart rate. So eat as you start. If your bedtime's 10, have your final meal of the day at 6 p.m. If you are going to bed at 10, at 9 p.m., begin your wind down routine by 9 p.m. That means screens are off. You're going for a walk, meditating, breath work, talking to a friend. You have a book in hand, but you are not on a screen. That is challenging because we are all addicted to our screens. You have to acknowledge you're addicted, and you have to make that separation. Helpful things in your home environment have have red and amber lights. Turn off blues. Be mindful of stimulants. A cup of coffee at 4 p.m. leaves a half a cup of coffee of caffeine in your body by 10 p.m. because there's roughly a 6-hour half-life. Everybody metabolizes caffeine differently, but there's an approximation. Be mindful of certain medications and stimulants, like ADHD medication will also elevate your heart rate. And then if you're going to have a fight with your partner or someone, don't do it in that last moment before bed. Try to plan a pre-morning, a morning fight when you're both, well rested and ready to go, but don't do that. That's really, really bad for sleep. But you're going to learn all these intuitions. So if you realize sleep is the number one performance enhancing drug, there's no more powerful drug in the world you can take on a daily basis, then it's worth prioritizing your life around sleep. And if you also believe that sleep will make you more successful in everything you do, then it justifies. And that is very counter to our current culture where people say sleep doesn't matter and actually successful people don't sleep. That's a ridiculous idea. It's foolish. I think people who are successful who don't sleep could be more successful if they slept. They're successful despite their lack of sleep. And so it's just like we've bought this really bad notion of success and lack of sleep with a few characters. It's just not the right, it's foolish. So that would be basically my suggestion is in all the stuff we're talking about, this is the single thing you can do in your life to have control. And this will be your resting heart rate before bed is your best accountability partner. Because if you're looking at whatever your vice is right before you go to bed, if you eat it or you do it, it's going to increase it. It will help stop you. So that'd be my take on how you collapse the complexity of health into something very simple, controllable.
I know you've been saying this recently, lower by 10% in 30 days. I found that I can only move my resting heart rate both up and down by a couple of beats, and across maybe 6 months, I could do that kind of dramatic change.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine because I'm guessing that a lot of people have a meaningful amount so there's low-hanging fruit that most people are not aware of this at all. They're not aware of the things that elevate. And I think you're probably already pretty dialed in with your own protocol. So I think my guess would be 10% would be totally achievable for most people. Mike, what's your take?
Most people, I think so. I think the average American has a lot of room to move on this. Just about everyone I talk to is still eating late meals, watching intense television, doing work emails until 9 p.m. Like, yeah, I think there's a lot of low hanging fruit out there in the world.
Okay, cool. Okay. All right. So now should we get into the actual steps that someone can do to lower the resting heart rate?
All right, you guys. So we've been very conversational about these topics, and let me try to run through these in a very short time frame that you can send to a loved one and just say, listen to this, 2 or 3 minute segment on how to get great sleep. So let me try to move through this very quickly. So I'm going to give you 10 tips on how to make sleep. 10 tips on how to achieve high quality sleep. So number one, reframe your identity that you are a professional sleeper. You take sleep as seriously as you do your work. And that means you really invest in creating the craft. Okay, so you are a professional sleeper. Number two is that you want to have your final meal of the day at least 4 hours before bed. You can experiment with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have my last meal of the day around 8 hours or so before my bedtime. And that allows my body to digest food. You're going to find when you eat earlier, you're going to find that it will give your body time to digest and will lower your heart rate and improve your sleep. You're also going to find that certain foods you eat, for example, if you have something heavy like a pasta or a bread or pizza, it's going to cause a longer elevated heart rate. So the kinds of foods will increase your heart rate. So what you eat and when you eat will dramatically affect your heart rate, which then affects your sleep. So eat earlier and lighter to achieve high quality sleep. Number three is you need to have a 30 to 60 minute wind down routine every day. You can't just finish work and then 30 seconds later, you just put your head on the pillow and fall asleep. Your body needs to wind down. You need to calm your mind, calm your body. And so the way I do this is I need to actually have a book in my hand. So I try not to do any screens whatsoever. So screens off, and then something like go for a walk, meditate, breath work, call a friend, have a book in hand, but you want to do something calm and relaxing. Evidence shows that a book in hand, for example, is as efficacious as a sleep pill. So you really want to have that last 30 to 60 minutes to get your body ready for sleep. You really need that time duration. And I realize we are all addicted to our phones, so just go through the process of acknowledging your addiction and setting aside. Next is when you wake up, you want morning light almost immediately. I get my morning light within 5 minutes. I think the window is like around 20 to 30 minutes. I wake up before the sun rises, around 4:30 a.m. So I use a 10,000 lux light in my home. Otherwise, you can just go out and get sunlight, but that sets your circadian rhythm, and it starts all of the positive processes your body needs to be on a certain rhythm. 4 is you want to be consistent in your bedtime. So if your bedtime's at 10 p.m., be in bed at 10 p.m. every night. Now, of course, you're going to have exceptions. There will be social events. There'll be other things. So just try your best. But when you have the ability to do so in your schedule, try to be on bed at the same time every single night. When I was achieving 8 months of perfect sleep, my bedtime was 8:30 p.m. I was in bed plus or minus like 1 minute every night. At least I tried. It was like a very, very close time frame. And it is, I'll tell you, it is amazing what the body does when it's given consistency. It's like I would fall asleep instantaneously. Next is you want to be mindful of stimulants, and that's because caffeine has roughly a 6-hour half-life. So a cup of coffee at 4 p.m. is a half a cup of coffee in you at 10 p.m. when you're asleep. So if you're going to consume caffeine, try to have it earlier in the day to give your body time to process. And that's also true for other stimulants like modafinil. And then for the evening light, you want to be mindful that to not have blue lights. So try to have screens off, or if your screens are on, in the evening, there's tools like Flux, F.lux, that you can have on a browser that kills the blue light. You can also turn your mobile device to have red mode. So you have red light, but you want to try to eliminate blues that will suppress melatonin. So red lights and amber lights. Next is you want to have for your room temperature, is you want to have a cooler temperature. Your body's going to do better with temperature around 69 to 71 Fahrenheit, thereabouts. I use a temperature controlled mattress in 8 Sleep, which really is very useful to modulate my temperature throughout the night. But sleeping hot is very challenging. You also want to have a peaceful sleep environment. So you want to be mindful of noise. So oftentimes people can have like a noisy neighbors. You can be by a noisy street. So try your best to situate where you sleep in your home and the environment so you don't get interrupted by various noises. If you do have noise around, you can use like a sound machine to try to offset that. That does a good job. Or have some earplugs. But be mindful that those things will interrupt your sleep. And then finally, is you can have a wearable. where you use Apple Watch, Aura, Whoop. They're all good. And just so you create intuitions on what things you do in life and how those relate to your sleep quality. That's been the best thing I've done is I've just really learned what I do in life and how it affects my sleep, which allows me then to build lifestyle and routines. So much of health is not about like take this supplement and do this therapy. It's about lifestyle and habits. And that's what this entirely is about, is making sleep a number one life priority and then building systems around that.
I like that, Bryan. I also like that you ended with it's very personalized, right? Like some of those things that you recommended are really going to land for some people, and some of them might not be as important for other people. If I might, I've got like 3 others that I might add to that list. So just to like be specific about the cell phone, you mentioned cell phone use. I think that there is a significant advantage to like literally plugging your phone in away from your bed. And so many people sleep with their phone right beside them, and they have difficulty fighting that urge to pick it up just to check it one last time before they go to sleep. If you plug it in a different room or in the other side of the room, you're much less likely to be drawn to that phone. So I think that's just a nice little trick for people just to help keep it out of their environment right before they sleep. Another one is, you mentioned the nighttime routine, which is super important. I think a really beneficial part of that, at least for some people, is journaling, whether that's writing down your worries, which you've mentioned in the past, or whether it's like gratitude journaling or just like writing about your day, like whatever it is. There's something that really, I don't know, connecting about just putting a pen on paper, just like holding a book in your hand. And I think that it allows people to like put down some of that anxiety from the day and transition into like their sleep environment. And then the third one I'll mention is really common in something called CBTI, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. That is a really helpful thing for people who have true insomnia, like they literally cannot fall asleep or they wake up in the middle of the night. And this tool is where basically bed is reserved for sex and sleep. And you literally do nothing in your bed except for have sex and go to sleep. Like those are the only things. And this allows you to sort of train your brain to realize what bed is for. And this can be beneficial for anyone, not just people with insomnia, but actually like creating a relationship between all I do in this position, in this place, is either sleep or have sex, and that's it. And that can be really helpful for a lot of people. So just thought I'd add those few caveats too.
Okay, I'll come in with the last one. That's going to be the most painful potentially for people, is to sleep separately from their partner. I will say that has made an enormous difference in my life. And so if you can, even if it's just another bed in the same room, if you can sleep separately to your partner, I would highly encourage it. I know some people can't, they don't have the luxury of that. So, do what you can, but that is a really big one.
I struggle with this one so much, Kate.
Do you sleep in the same bed as your partner?
We do. And like, she has brought up on a couple of occasions how much I disrupt her sleep. And, but I have this like attachment. I don't know. It's like, I think it's from my childhood, like with my grandparents sleeping in separate rooms and me like associating that with them not having a good relationship anymore. And like, it is so ingrained in me that I have this like mental block around the idea, you know what I mean? Just to be totally honest. And I recognize that's stupid.
100%.
Like, it doesn't make any sense. I should be able to recognize that I can still love someone and sleep in a different bed with them, but it's just like, it's challenging for me. And I suspect 100%. It's that way for a lot of people.
Definitely. There's such a stigma about it. It means that there's something wrong and it's not being acknowledged. It's not being communicated. I had originally the same perception. And it's so to maybe give you some voice from the other side is like, once you start doing it, it's like, oh, nothing changed about the relationship and you have better quality sleep. So like that, yeah, I think you should try it out, even if it's just like, a couple of days or something like that, and then see how you feel about it.
We did, when I had shoulder surgery, and we did actually do it for about a month when I had that, because it's just hard to do that. And the challenge was, I think I was in a really uncomfortable bed and I didn't have my 8 sleep. So I wasn't as stoked about it.
Yeah. And you just had surgery. Yeah, so that would have been painful.
True. You guys, I think this podcast is really just therapy.
Yeah, I think so.
For the three of us.
Yeah, mostly. I think hopefully that's okay. I think a lot of people need the same therapy.
That's true.
If I remember correctly, looking through the evidence, I think it was a mixed bag in terms of, I think some people actually experienced a higher quality sleep when they were paired with someone else. and then others improve their sleep. So I initially, I think, imagined that everybody would have better sleep because you just have the asynchronous nature of sleep where you've got disruptive patterns, going bedtime, getting up at night, etc. sounds. But if I'm not mistaken, there's data to suggest that some people do legitimately sleep better when they are paired.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see if that's like after a normalized length of time in both scenarios, or if that's like a short study. Yeah, I'd be very curious to look into that. Maybe we can add that to our topic list.
I think we should do another. I mean, we do lots of episodes on sleep, but I feel like we could do one on this specifically, and maybe even have like, I don't know, somebody who knows what they're talking about. Like, not to say that we don't, but like an expert in sleep to come and like talk to us about this. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, Bryan, in your data, what was your experience? Because obviously you've had partners in the past. I'm sure you would have shared a bed with plenty of people. That sounds inappropriate, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't have data from those time periods in my life, but I do remember that the number of wake events that I had was 3, 4, 5, 6, whereas now my number of wake events that I actually can remember is 0 to 1. So it's substantially. I think I oddly at age 47 am getting the best sleep of my life, legitimately, even though my biological processes are of a 47-year-old, right? I mean, we're doing good to push these things down, but it's just much easier to get sleep when you're a teenager, early 20s. You have all your biology is just like in your favor. And so, I think for other people who are asking questions, like I would say, if you have insomnia or you're struggling with sleep, of course, there are situations where you do need professional help to address these sleep challenges. And so these things are simply to say that in American society, when something is wrong, we turn to a pill. And that is our way of thinking. We don't turn to lifestyle habits. And what we're trying to point out here is that no one has ever taught you how to sleep, including like when you eat something dramatically affects your sleep quality. And so if you start knocking out these low-hanging fruit on basically when you eat, what you eat, alcohol, stimulants, etc., you may find gains here that dramatically improve your situation. But give your body time to adjust. Give it a few weeks. Your body needs some time to get into a new rhythm. If you still have challenges, that's certainly fine. You can step up and try to find other solutions. But most of the time, people are not even doing these basic things. And this is also true, you guys. If this podcast could essentially be about mental disorders too, right? It could be about mood disorders. So like we could be talking about depression or anxiety, and like the best protocol to address first line of defense for depression and anxiety is to nail your sleep. Now, I know that's hard to say. I've been depressed. And when you're depressed, it's very hard to sleep because you've got a whole bunch of other complicated situations. And I was also overeating to try to address my depressive symptoms. Like it's complicated. Also, that first line of defense is getting these basic biological processes in place to let your body repair. So I'd say, like this is why sleep warrants being the number one priority for everybody on planet Earth. There's just nothing that does the body more good.
Did you want to drop your mic, Bryan? That felt pretty good.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, gosh, I just wish somebody would have been in my life to tell me these things. I don't know why do I have to navigate this for 20 years by myself without someone pointing out these very obvious things in life. Like I just I went through so much pain. So, and I hate to see other people go through pain when these solutions are just so reachable and doable by people.
I think it's a poetic ending for today's episode.
Feels good. Yeah. Mike, as a conclusion, can you tell us what's happening on the pit? What episode are you in? I might need to know this. How is this a series?
Yeah, it's a whole series. I'm only on episode 3. So.
And how many are there?
So far in. I think there's like 15 or something. There's quite a few.
Yeah. What's your plan?
I don't know. I don't have a plan. Like, admittedly, there is no plan. Because, like, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't make sense to watch it at 11 a.m. And I'm not sure that I'm ready to trash my sleep for it. So I don't know. Maybe it's a Saturday.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Like a Saturday
at 5 p.m.
Like a 4 to 5, like special time slot.
I love that.
Followed by like 2 hours of meditation to try to get my nervous system back right.
Good podcast. Good luck. And then Mike, keep us posted on your pit watching episodes. How you go.
All right.